Welcome to Change by Design, the podcast where we shine a spotlight on engineering transformation. I'm your host, Chad Jackson, and each week we dive deep with leaders driving real change in the world of engineering. From breaking down barriers to challenging the status quo to fostering cultures of innovation and resilience, our guests share their journeys, lessons learned, and actionable insights to help you become the catalyst for positive change in your organization. Whether you're an engineer, an executive, or simply passionate about making a difference, you're in the right place. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to engineer a better future, one change at a time. Nikki Maginn, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm really excited about this conversation too. So, just for context for listeners and viewers, can you give a little bit of background about what you're doing right now? What are you doing in your career currently today? What are your responsibilities? What's your mission? What are you trying to accomplish?
Ooh,
Love to start there.
such big questions. So what I do, the short answer is I teach emotional intelligence to engineers. And those engineers can be in high school, college, or professional engineers. And my day job, right? I founded this organization, which means I get to do all the things. Sometimes I'm a salesman, sometimes I'm in marketing, sometimes I'm actually talking to engineers, and those are my favorite times.
That's great.
Yeah, sometimes I'm on podcasts, sometimes I'm on stages. It's the fun life of being an entrepreneur. You get to do all of the things. But at the core, I'm here to empower engineers to find their voice and use their voice, help them understand how to regulate themselves, and really just give them the human tools that we're not learning in school. Because when we're in school, right, we learn how to be a good little soldier, we learn how to be a good engineer, and do all the math problems, and unfortunately, those math problems are given to us in ideal conditions, and then we're thrown into the real world where chaos ensues, and there are no such thing as ideal conditions. And sometimes we struggle, and then we're again surrounded by people that don't speak engineering languages, and they don't understand basic physics, like why you can't put electricity next to water. And our engineering brains go, what do you mean you want this nuclear power plant to be an art display? I don't understand. So I want to help engineers thrive in whatever environment they're in, right? Whether it's corporate or academia or just the scientific community in general.
Yeah, that's great. Spectacular. I love it. And by the way, for listeners and viewers, we are going to connect this to change initiatives and what it means to individuals as well as organizations. But before we get there, I know there's a really interesting story on how you got here, right? So, I mean, this is not the traditional role for someone with an engineering degree. Like, can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you arrived here?
Yeah. So, the I guess I'll do like the streamlined origin story. I grew up in aviation. I actually could legally fly a plane before I could drive a car, and
Oh, that's great.
just casual things. My dad wanted all of us to be pilots, but very quickly I realized that being a pilot meant sitting in a metal box and not talking to people all day. And I simply can't do that. Like, I am terrible at the quiet game. I'm terrible at sitting still. So I was also a lot more interested in, how the plane worked, like how it got in the air, this metal hunk. How is this allowed? So I was very much more interested in how things worked. And my grandmother was a Rosie the Riveter. She designed aircraft carriers during World War II. Yeah, brilliant woman. First engineer I've ever known. And so she was really my inspiration for wanting to become an engineer. She was the happiest person in the world. She blazed trails that simply wouldn't exist without her. And I knew I wanted to be just like her when I grew up. So I was actually reading a science fiction book by Dan Brown, Angels and Demons, when I stumbled across antimatter and the idea of like smashing atoms to create pure, clean energy. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, I'm going to do this when I grow up and solve the world's energy problems. And I'm going to be just like my Grammy. And when I got to school, that's when I was actually introduced to nuclear engineering, because I didn't really, like, my guidance counselors were like, Nikki, just, you like electricity? Here, be an electrical engineer. And I was like, sure, I don't know any different. Well, thankfully, a classmate was like, no, you want to be over here. And so he kindly brought me to nuclear, and I completely fell in love.
Awesome.
So I did nuclear for a degree, but unfortunately, I graduated right after Fukushima, which meant the world fell out of love with us nuclear engineers and the nuclear world in general. So I actually got 199 rejections from global nuclear.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I still have the spreadsheet.
It's hard.
It was so hard.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I had to learn emotional resiliency really early in my adult life.
Yeah.
Because it's hard not to take it personally, right? When you're sold this idea, especially as a woman in engineering, they're like, oh my God, they're gonna just like be so many doors open to you. And then to have so many of them just slammed in my face. It was a hard pill to swallow. So then I just started applying for like any and every engineering job, which is what led me to material handling. And a company called Dematic looked at my resume and they were like, Nikki, you're a nuclear engineer, you're a pilot, you have biomedical engineering experience. Why on earth do you want to work here? And I tell this to my students all the time, like, do not say what I said. But I looked at the man and I said, I will get you coffee if you give me a job. I was like, please. I was like, I'm tired of living at home with mom and dad. I need a job. So yeah, they were like, okay, we'll give it a shot. We've never hired a nuclear engineer before. So I came in originally and they were like, we want you to be in sales. You're a female engineer with social skills. I was a former student athlete. So they were like, oh, you're going to be great in sales. And then I came in to do one project just to like learn the business, because I don't know anything about material handling at this point, right? I didn't know anything about industrial engineering as much as I wish I could have gone back and studied it now, because I completely fell in love with it. But at the time, knew nothing. So then I, got into the world. I went from managing one project to managing 33 in about 3 months. Yep, because 33, because I am the engineer that loves talking to people. I walked around the office just asking my coworkers, like, what are you guys working on? And they're like, well, I'm doing. They would complain about something. I'm like, well, I could do that for you. I just finished mine. Would you do this for me? And they were like, totally. And so we would literally just like swap things that we didn't want to do.
Horse trading.
Literally. Great. And eventually, that's how I ended up becoming the project manager for 33 projects and like $25 million, 3 months out of school. And yeah, it was amazing. It was this like incredible growth opportunity. So I got to do some things at 22, 23 years old that the average 22, 23-year-old doesn't get to do. And that's what led me to really get immersed in supply chain and problem solving and process excellence and change management, because I was then I had developed these emotional intelligence skills, because I could connect with everybody. I really understood their pain points and their challenges, and I would gladly take things off their plate, and take the things that they didn't want to do in exchange for the things they did want to do. So little by little, I started building this reputation as a problem solver, and someone that people really trusted, because I connected with them and I really understood why they were frustrated, and would give them like actionable things to help improve their situation. And so I got brought down. I actually lived in Mexico for a while, running one of our manufacturing plants, and then got sent back to Grand Rapids, where we reopened another plant. So I lived and breathed, industrial engineering and supply chain for years and completely fell in love with it. So, and throughout all of that was really my first introduction to change management and process excellence and just like operations improvement. So I started, and then after those experiences, I started getting pulled into these senior leadership spaces, and senior leadership roles, because I could manage and lead change so effectively. And not just like, hey, Nikki, here's a great process, but let me emotionally connect with you and talk about why these changes matter, how it's going to benefit you, and make sure that I really understand the pain points that you've got before we just jump in and start solving your problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, my biggest change management initiative in corporate, I had to create a new product development process that coordinated 35 different functions.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You're a change agent. Yeah.
thank
Like you've
you.
had a major aspect of that in your career.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you.
So how'd you make the transition from that? It seems like you had a trajectory where you could have continued to be a change agent and continued, frankly, I mean, it sounded like you were on a senior executive track.
Yes.
But you're doing something very different now. You're talking about EQ and emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Talk to me about that transition.
Yes. So I really struggled in my early career to find fulfillment in the work I was doing. Because, I'm an engineer. I want to make the world a better place. I want to contribute meaningfully. And so at first I started just building women's mentorship programs and just women's networks in my company, just helping, bring and create community within my space. And I started a program at the University of Tennessee really after a friend of mine connected me with a female engineering student who was struggling with some sexism in the workplace. And my friend was a therapist, and she was like, look, I've helped her as much as a therapist can, right? Like therapists cannot give advice. They cannot, they can't really tell you what to do. But she's like, I want her to have access to someone who has experienced and overcome these type of challenges, because it's a very different relationship in that space.
Yeah.
So she connected the two of us. We talked through these challenges. I helped her, talk through what happened to me and how I overcame it. And we got her out of those situations. And she was like, Nikki, I want more students to have what we have, because I wouldn't stay in engineering if I didn't have you. And I said, well, that's a beautiful sentiment. Let's figure that out. What does that look like? And so we built a mentorship program with the Society of Women Engineers at UT. And originally it was me just connecting these students with all of my badass female engineering friends that were doing like really creative things with their degrees. And over time, a couple years in, apparently a number of the students walked into the director of Women in Engineering's office and said, I wouldn't be graduating if it wasn't for Nikki Maginn. And I was like, oh, I mean, my life is complete. That's all I've ever wanted. How meaningful.
That's great.
It was. And so I got a phone call about a week later and from that director, and she was like, look, Nikki, we don't know what you're doing, but we need you to do more of it, because the dean is constantly getting feedback that our students are technically brilliant, but they're not workforce ready. So can you help us with that? I said, absolutely. So I started digging into the research and, looking at my own experiences. I started kind of tapping into a lot of resources that I had available to me, mentors, just the scientific community in general. And I wanted to understand the underlying issues. And for me, so much of it is grounded in the mental health challenges. When we come into engineering school, I think the statistic is, 55% of engineering students today struggle with some sort of mental health distress. And then if you are a minority, right, like a female engineer, person of color in the LGBT community, or if you are like a first generation college student, that compounds 2 to 6 times higher.
Wow.
Right. And then and it's a very isolating space. Like you're competing against everybody all the time. It's a very individualistic space. So, and then you get thrown into the corporate world where, and this was the challenge that there's the feedback the dean gets all the time, is that these students do not know how to get into the real world because they've never really had to collaborate. They are on their phones all the time. We're training them to be, head down, let me focus on this problem, but not gather and collect feedback from all of the stakeholders. Like you don't have that when you're in engineering school. So I kind of bridge the, these are actionable workforce skills with the underlying mental health challenges that we're facing. And a lot of it is just focusing on that self-awareness piece, because as soon as you understand your own limitations in your own brain or your own superpowers, you are going to be so much more successful in every space, because you can start working with your brain and not against it. So I call it emotional intelligence because that is a marketable skill. It's a measurable skill. And I also use that language because it allows me to kind of, hide the zucchini in the brownies for the students.
That's great. Get some nutrition.
Exactly.
Along the way.
100%.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to talk about mental health, right? Like I myself felt so uncomfortable with it, like knees to chest would run away. But at the end of the day, we are never here to do anything alone. I mean, everything we do, even if you're a solopreneur, we need each other, right? We need to support one another. Humans are wired for connection. So the more we can bring that into our engineering curriculum at the university level and then help us retrain that in the corporate settings, right? The better off we're going to be. And it allows engineers to thrive in all of the spaces, and it allows like innovation to grow and change to be more palatable, and ultimately just leads to a more ethical and sustainable world.
Yeah, no, that's great. What a great story. I mean, what a great journey for you to go on and to make a difference. I mean, kudos to you. That's spectacular in so many different ways.
Thank you.
So let's connect it. I want to connect it to both individuals and organizations. But before we move forward, it feels like we need a baseline of emotional intelligence. Break that down a little bit more, maybe down to the next level. What do you mean when you talk about emotional intelligence?
Yeah. So to me, the definition I like to use is emotional intelligence is your ability to understand, manage, and regulate your own emotions, to collaborate effectively with others, to manage conflict, and ultimately create a better world around you. So it's not about me managing you or your emotions. It's how do I hold myself accountable? How do I calm myself down so that I'm not projecting my feelings onto you? And also understanding that how you're feeling is not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of your internal state. So helping you understand the difference between, right? And it's not, I'm not reading your mind. I'm not reading the room. Eventually you get those skills, but it has to start with you. You can't learn anything around the world. I believe that you are not going to learn how to recognize patterns in others until you learn how to recognize them in yourself.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And then what term would you use to describe that set of skills around reading the room, as you mentioned, or understanding the state that others are in? What do you use for that?
The name?
What term?
What term?
Yeah.
I think it still falls under emotional intelligence. But one of my favorite frameworks was developed by Dr. Mark Brackett. He founded the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, and he uses this ruler method. And so it goes regulate, understand, recognize, express, and what's the other R? Oh my gosh.
Penelope, isn't it so hard whenever
it is. I'm on the spot.
Like this.
Hold on. I have to get the book now. Hold on.
You're doing great though. You're
Thank
doing
you.
Good. Yeah, go ahead, get the book. Yeah. So
we've got the book.
Yeah.
We've got the book.
All right. Excellent. Excellent.
I mean, I want the listeners to know the real book.
And you got the bookmarks too. So that's awesome.
I am an active reader. I simply cannot. Okay, there it is. Recognize. Oh, I forgot the L. Silly me. I forgot how to spell. Okay, so it's recognize. That's great. See, engineers, we're good at math, but apparently not spelling.
We got it though. We know how to find the references.
Yes, exactly. See, resourceful. That should be one of these. Okay, so the ruler method. Recognizing your own emotions and those of others, understanding those feelings and determining their source, labeling them with nuanced vocabulary, expressing them, and that's kind of that like emotional literacy that we talk a lot about. Expressing our feelings with like the norms of where we are and then regulating ourselves, which we've kind of talked a lot about. So it's underneath that recognize umbrella, because it falls, yes, I can recognize it in me, but I also, because I can recognize it in me, I can recognize it in others.
Spectacular. That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about why this is important.
Yeah.
Right. So, oftentimes when you're talking about a business context, so often people talk about the value to the organization or the value to executives. And we'll talk about that in a second, but I think there's a lot of value for individual engineers. And as a matter of fact, today is November 6th. I saw earlier today, you posted something on LinkedIn that talked about compensation.
Yeah.
And how that correlates with emotional intelligence. Can you take a few seconds and talk about that?
Yeah. So for us as individual contributors, emotional intelligence is all about how we connect meaningfully with others around us, right? Are we really credible? Do people trust us? Do they rely on us to, get our job done? The less micromanaged engineers are the ones that are more emotionally intelligent, because people know, oh, they're going to get their job done. I don't have to worry about them, which also makes us more promotable, right? People like working with us. They trust us to take on hard things and make sure that we're delivering results. Because we also collaborate really well, it means that we're going to pull in all the stakeholders. We're essentially very good at leading ourselves and making sure we fully understand the impact of every decision that we make. So just from like a day-to-day work standpoint, you are essentially a high performer in corporate terms, right? If you have high emotional intelligence, you are a high performer, a high potential in an organization. And it also translates to higher salaries, because it makes you more promotable, right? The statistics or the data behind it is you make about 30 grand more a year if you have emotional intelligence. So there's not only are you more impactful in your day job, but it also translates to dollar value, right? You get more financial benefit from your likability, your ability to connect with others, your ability to solve problems in a meaningful way, right? All of those things translate to you're promotable, you're engaging, you're going to be given the best assignments. It also ultimately helps you become a better leader, whether you're leading yourself or leading others.
That's great. And I see the reference here is Talent Smart EQ and NIH, which is the National Institute of Health.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. So, if you're listening or watching this, again, November 6th, go back to Nikki's feed on LinkedIn. You can find this PDF that you can kind of go through, and it gives you more of an explanation. So that's great from a personal perspective. And let's also talk about what it means for the organization. And I want to preface that a little bit, in that, in my experience in working with executives, finding people that they trust is crucial, because those are going to be your leaders that you can delegate. You don't have to worry about it. The outcome that you're seeking as an executive will be achieved because this is a person you can trust, and they will elevate issues if they need help, or they can work with peers, maybe people that are working for them, and get them aligned to what needs to get done. And all that lines up very, very well with emotional intelligence. But you've worked with a lot of executives as well, Nikki. Can you talk a little bit more, maybe expound on that a little bit?
Sure. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about trust, because at the end of the day, as much, and this is really something you and I had connected on earlier, as much as every organization and every executive wants to say they make data-based decisions, we really make emotional decisions, and then we go find data to back up the emotional decision that we made. So an executive is going to find somebody they trust to talk about and to listen to the underlying issues that they're facing. And I also kind of talk about it as being a translator. most of my career, I've been that person between the technical doers and the executives because we do speak different languages, right? At some point, even if you are an engineer, there becomes a point when you are an executive leader where you are only making decisions based on the information that's given to you. And it has to be given to you in a way that you can make a decision on, right? If an engineer is just going to give me a bunch of data without telling me what it means, I'm going to struggle as an executive because then I'm going to have to go down my own analysis, which is what I need my engineers to do for me. So I've been that person that sat between the two, translating the information to make sure that it's understandable and digestible by the executives. But then also letting the engineers know, hey, this is what the executives are really struggling with. This is the real challenge that we're trying to solve for. Because a big challenge I've seen from an executive standpoint is we have great leaders with great visions, but they don't take it one step further, even in their own minds, to just say, okay, what needs to happen to make this vision real, right? And I'm not asking every executive to become a detail-oriented person, because that's not what leadership is. But I am asking them to think about, okay, this is a grand vision. Let's think about reality for a second and the challenges we might be facing to bring this to life. Because a lot of times when we just throw out these big visions, the engineers struggle because they're like, well, this is completely impossible. You want me to make a flying car tomorrow? That's crazy. Or you want to be a $3 billion company next year, but you have no processes, you've got no standardized practices. What do you mean? There's a bit of a disconnect. So to the trust point, right? Like I call it being a translator, just having somebody that understands and builds the relationships with both sides to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's great. Spectacular. Another thing I'd like to touch on real quick is, and this gets to some differences in generations. I'm a Gen Xer. Back when I entered the workforce, it was, okay, you're there to fulfill the vision and the function that an executive sets out. And if you're not there to do that, then you're in the wrong place. And I think the workforce is changing, especially with Gen Zers and maybe younger millennials that they are looking for fulfillment and they're looking for purpose. And I think the interaction has shifted from, top down executive driving, okay, this is what you're going to do, to kind of a two-way exchange of, certainly the executive can define a vision and drive alignment, but you also need to instrument your organization with listening so that, and also, this not only gets to, hey, how do you find the best talent and retain the best talent? That is an aspect of it. But also I think there's an aspect of, are you leading an organization that's as effective and functional as it can be? And that comes with empowerment. So I'd love to get your color commentary kind of on that change or trend or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So I love the topic of generational workplace and the multi-generational workplaces that we're in, because I'm a millennial, and I came into the workforce with a lot of baggage, just kind of like labels that were just thrust upon me. And I very, very quickly broke those stereotypes to the point where I earned the title, the millennial with a work ethic. And
oh my gosh.
I know.
Wow, that's harsh. Holy cool. Like,
and like at the time I wore it proudly. I was like, yeah, I have a work ethic. But and to be fair, right, I'm very privileged in the sense that I have been working across generations since I was a child, right? Like I've been working with executives and people in multiple generations. Like I've been working with the greatest generation in the world since I was 10, working with like women Air Force service pilots. So I have lived and breathed multiple generations. And when I first came into the workforce, I was very comfortable with the baby boomers, right? Those were the people that raised me. So I was very comfortable. I knew exactly how to give them what they wanted. And what the research has shown is, believe it or not, baby boomers and millennials want the same things.
I've heard about this before. Keep going.
Yeah. So as much as baby boomers are like, oh, millennials are entitled, they think the world is like, they, deserve everything, that everything should be handed to them. To be fair, boomers were the first generation to ever be given the world on a silver platter. They were the first generation to be told, you can be anything you want. Now, they also had to compete for more jobs, just because, again, there's a huge boom of people. So we had to find more jobs, and it was a little bit more cutthroat.
Yeah.
So for half of the boomer generation, right? Because even within a generation, you have the older and the younger, and cultural things shape that.
Yeah, of course.
But you have a boomer generation that was essentially, they grew up in the idyllic situation. They had everything available to them, and they were the first ones that were told they were special. So then, and which is so ironic to me, because that is the generation that kind of points the fingers at millennials, be like, oh, you think you're so special? You think you deserve a participation award? We're like, you got them first. Like, this is really the pot calling the kettle black here. But
okay.
I also know, right, the research shows that our boomers were also this first generation to ever seek fulfillment and seek meaning in their lives, right? If you think about like the women's rights movement, think about everything that happened in the 60s, right? Everybody wanted a piece of the dream, and everybody was seeking some sort of fulfillment for them. So then you have our Gen Xers, right, who kind of grew up in an environment where we were first starting to question the nature of our reality. So Gen X grew up with, the Nixon era and Watergate and Vietnam, right? So it's the first generation that's essentially growing up skeptic, right, about the world around us. And that's the world that millennials kind of grow up in too, right? We have an influx of information available to us, and which also means we have an abundance of opportunity around us. We grow up with technology, which means that we can create our own reality. And while the boomers had a very finite set of companies and organizations that they could work at, we as millennials, we can go anywhere and do anything. And we have seen our parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles struggle and do hard work to find fulfillment or to seek fulfillment, because everybody is seeking it. Some people just talk about it more than others, to the point where millennials are like, well, I'm not going to settle. I'm not interested in going to work in a space where it's not at the forefront of the conversation. So millennials have very much pushed that boundary. And from a generational workplace standpoint, millennials are really the first generation to start asking why. To your point earlier about Gen Xers coming into the workforce, it's, I'm here to fulfill an executive's mission. I'm not here to ask questions, right? Millennials, I'm going to ask you a question. I want to know why. And on top of that, right, like especially us engineers, that's what our brains are wired to do. I'm not just going to go take this thing that you want me to design without fully understanding why you want me to design it, because I know, Mr. Salesman, you are not an engineer and you think you're solving the customer's problem, but me finding out, oh, this is actually a refrigerated, food company, which means I'm going to need to work in different conditions than what you originally gave me. Like there's a time limit on the amount of time a box can sit in a certain part of the warehouse. I need to know those. I need to ask why. I need to understand the full context of things.
Yeah.
So if me as a millennial coming into the workforce, and executives like, we're going to be a $3 billion company in the next 5 years. Why? Tell me why. What does that mean?
Yeah, right. What's the purpose?
Yes.
What's the function?
What is the purpose? And what are we going to do with that power, that profit, right? Because we also are the first generation not to want these things, because I believe every generation wanted fulfillment, wanted meaning, wanted purpose, and we all do. Yeah. It's a human experience. But millennials are really the first generation to just be very vocal about why, and holding companies accountable to, I want to know what your mission is. I want to know what your company values are, because I want to work at a company that aligns with my values. And I think the millennial generation has done a really great job of normalizing mental health and normalizing the power of why, and doing the research to understand why fear-based cultures don't succeed for very long.
Right.
And so I believe we've very much paved the way for the Gen Zs who have just taken that baton and just sprinted with it. Like,
most certainly.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
everything's on fire, and they are so passionate about doing good things and
Yeah.
working for companies that do good things, because they're very educated. They're honestly one of the most educated, because they have access to information that other generations just simply didn't. And
Right.
again, if you think about like the boomer generation, they were given the news from curated and defined sources, and
Yes.
you couldn't question it, because where else are you going to go? Whereas like Gen Zs, the news is in your hand. I am the news. And I think I read somewhere that people trust an influencer more than they trust their own friend to make decisions on like buying products or services.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is.
Interesting. Wow.
So we've really democratized information in that sense, and access to things. Whereas so that is a huge generational divide. But I think kind of coming full circle to your initial question of how do you work with all of these different generations? I do think, regardless of generation, connecting with humans at the human level of, this is what I value, this is what the company values, this is what we're here to do, these are the big missions, this is the purpose, this is our contribution to the world around us, because that is a deep human experience. We all want that. And I think I really hope that the senior generations can put down the gauntlet of do it because I said so, and we can just hopefully retire that language, because all of these next generations, we just want to know why, right? We will gladly follow orders if you tell me why I have to do it, right? I'm not a soldier. I did not sign up for the military. So I'm in a company. I need you to tell me why. So I think as the first step before you do anything, help people understand why you're asking them to do something. Give them context, because you're humanizing every aspect of the work life when you do that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I think it even speaks to an emotional reaction from those that might be resistant to this, because there are worthy missions everywhere, whether it's, you want to work in heavy equipment to help with food security or feeding the hungry. If you want to help in medical devices to help improve generational health, if you want to help, secure the, protection of a nation, or even help with the transition of the automotive industry to, help reduce greenhouse gases and improve climate change, that type of stuff. I mean, there are worthy missions in all of these, but I think a lot of times that attitude of, okay, just shut up and do what I told you to do, is an emotional reaction from some of these older generations, when if you can flip it, right? And this isn't like some manipulation. This needs to be genuine and authentic. Your organization becomes so much more powerful, because I tell you what, highly motivated Gen Z and millennial employees that are empowered to go find solutions for really nasty problems are incredibly powerful. And I think leadership needs to, change the attitude, tweak it, right? So that you can, sometimes it's more about executives getting aligned with how the younger generations work than the opposite, right? And that's not necessarily who's right or wrong. It's about being effective.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Because change is the only constant. The idea that we can make somebody conform to the way we used to work, it's a thing of the past. It's a logical fallacy. We have to learn to adapt to what the next generation of the workforce cares about. And I honestly, this is Nikki's hot take, this is Nikki's opinion, but I think that the millennials and the Gen Zs and even the Gen Alphas, right? They're very in touch with what it means to be human. And I think it is something that we can all learn from, that it's okay to want fulfillment. It's okay to want to know that the work you do is meaningful. And I also do want to call out that it's not always just up to a company, right? Like a company is made up of, it exists only on paper, right? A company is made up of people, and every individual has the power to assign meaning for themselves. Like me, for example, yes, I worked in material handling for a very long time. And when I first got into the workforce, I could not find meaning in it because I just really struggled with the idea of getting somebody their box faster. Like, why? Why should I care?
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I started doing teaching and creating my curriculum that, because I was living in Chicago and I only had like a weekend, right? I worked on this on the weekends because I was a director. I had a full-time job, and unfortunately that meant, sometimes nights. So my weekends were when I got to really focus on my passion project. And so because we lived in Chicago, the nearest Costco is like an hour away. So we had to like spend a solid, I don't know, almost an entire half day, sometimes even a full day, just doing our grocery shopping. So I would lose one day of my weekend. And I finally thought about it. I was like, I'm not a big like online shopper. I'm really not. So I never thought, Nikki, you do this for a living. Why would you not just Amazon it? And finally I did. Finally, I was like, wait a minute. I create technology that allows your groceries to show up at your door. Why am I not leveraging the own tech? And so I started doing that. I started ordering my own groceries and letting things show up to my door instead of me having to go shopping. And I realized in that moment that that's what I was doing in my corporate job. I was giving people the gift of time to pursue more meaningful things. So, but that was Nikki's decision. That was completely on me. The company didn't change its purpose or mission or value statements. It was just what I found in my day job. So I think it's, yes, like companies should be very clear and they should have worthy causes and missions, right? I do think that there's something to be said for asking the question, should we, not just can we make something? But I also think that it is very much within the power of the individual to choose to find meaning in the work that they do.
Yeah. I think those are all great points. Let's start to connect this to change initiatives. That's a lot of what we focus on. We've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
This is great conversation. But with change initiatives, and part of the reason I want to talk to you is because there are a lot of emotions wrapped up with change initiatives. And when I talk with, and I see these, examples all the time, and talk with people and hear examples of this all the time, where people say that a failed change initiative had nothing to do with the technology. That was fine. They were able to re-engineer the process. That was okay. It was cultural resistance. It was the people part of it that was kind of mishandled.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear from you, maybe what are the range of emotions that can come with change? I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me want to get Atlas of the Heart out and go through like the full 87 different emotions that we experience. Yeah, because change is such an emotional process. I mean, from the simple frustration of you just pushed out a software update and now the button that I'm on autopilot going to click is now gone. You've just like, and again, it's a biological response because I'm on autopilot and all of a sudden I have to think about something that I didn't have to think about before. I'm frustrated. You've slowed me down, which for us engineers is infuriating because we care about efficiency. So it goes very quickly from, oh my gosh, this is so annoying, to now I'm infuriated because I have to think about more things that I didn't plan to think about in my day. Because I have to navigate this new software that you just updated without telling me. And so there's like the baseline frustration. There's the annoyance of, there's what I call change fatigue, right? People are really annoyed that they're constantly getting changes pushed out to them. And then sometimes, if you are a change agent, you have the other side of the spectrum where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to solve these problems, right? I have joy because I know what good looks like, and I know that it's on the other side of this process change, whether it's, changing something simple or creating an entire new technology platform for the company. So you really do see the full spectrum of human emotions when you go through change, from the like super frustrated, annoyed, angry to, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread, and I'm so excited about it, and everything that kind of falls in between, depending on how much emotional baggage and how long you've been at the company. Those kind of things will also
Yeah.
compound to the emotional reactions that you will get when it goes through change initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's spectacular. So, mm, can you talk a little bit about emotional intelligence? Let's start with the change agent. Um, how you can use emotional intelligence to be more effective and also find more fulfillment in your role.
Yeah.
But also, I'd also love to hear a little bit about like stress levels
Mm,
being a change agent, right? Because it's not a normal role. You're being
no.
asked to do unusual things. I know
Yeah.
I asked a lot there, but
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I'm gonna write down the second one, so I don't forget.
Yeah.
So first question, um, how you can leverage emotional intelligence while you're experiencing change. So I think at its core, right, emotional intelligence is all about self-awareness and regulation. So
Mm.
being being able to kind of pull yourself out of the emotion that you're in requires you to label it and understand, okay, this is, hey, they're pushing out a new process. I'm frustrated by it. I'm annoyed. I'm confused. I don't know why this keeps happening. I feel really unstable. I'm questioning whether or not, like, what's going to happen to me in my job. So really
Yeah.
being able to take a step back, because it's a practice, right? But when change happens, give yourself the grace to feel what you're feeling, right? All feelings and emotions are valid, but all behaviors are not. So take a step back, feel what you're feeling, label what you're feeling, and then trace back the source, right? Because it just because you can label what you're feeling gives you power, but it's also important for you to take action and know what to do. So
Yeah.
say I'm super frustrated that they're pushing out another change. I'm having a bit of change fatigue, and I'm also really confused because I thought we just dealt with this with the last company initiative. Why is this
Mhm.
happening? So I'm going to get clarity on my own feelings, and then I'm going to go talk to somebody that can help answer my questions. So maybe it's my boss, maybe it's the process champion that's coming to talk about this new change. I'm going to
Yeah.
give myself the ability to take a breath and then go talk to them from a calm place and a curious place, and not a, why are you doing this to me? We just dealt with this, right? There's
Yeah.
two very different ways that you can handle that. You don't want to just shoot
Yeah.
off at somebody because they believe that they're doing something amazing and great for you. So have the grace to understand, okay, this person is doing their best, right? Always assume positive intent.
Yes.
But have the self-awareness to know, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I need to do to calm myself down or get excited about what's going on. And then here's the actions I need to take to make myself, better informed or help me work through the confusion or frustration that I have.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's great. Absolutely. So how can one of these change leaders that's
Mm.
driving process change or other types of change, knowing that, okay, now we know, or now they know that helping the person experiencing change needs to kind of go through that process.
Mhm.
What can a change leader or process change driver do to help the organization through that effort? Because it's not natural, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you don't see a lot of organizations like, okay, you know, label it, track it to its source, and then communicate and talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's discuss it.
Yeah, I think at at the forefront of any change initiative as the change agent, right? The champion, the executive. It's really important to acknowledge the feelings in the room and how people are going to feel about your change.
Validation.
Yeah, validate how people are feeling. You as the leader should know people are going to be frustrated, right? So we hear that you're frustrated. We understand that we just pushed out another change initiative just 6 months ago. Here's the progress and here's why we're taking it this next step, right? Let me address how you're feeling and then let me talk about why, like validate that, yeah, this is frustrating. It feels like we just did this last week. And now here's another thing that we have to do, right? Talk about the feelings, give people space. And also do a lot of like what I call just like your interviews, right? Spend a lot of time with your stakeholders, do your kind of world tour, because it's really not I'm going to stand at the pulpit and speak to the masses type of thing.
Broadcast.
But you can't just broadcast this kind of stuff. If you really want people to get on board with change, you have to meet them where they are. You need to go to their offices. You need to sit down with them in person. Don't just do this, and I get it. We're in a virtual world and there's benefits to both. But if you have opportunities to meet with people in their offices in person, take those opportunities, because you are going to get a very different emotional reaction, and you're going to get a more honest emotional reaction from people when you're with them versus just broadcasting in a large Zoom setting or Teams setting. But so acknowledge the feelings, validate the feelings. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't just pretend that this is going to solve all the company problems, because we know it won't. Every company change initiative sometimes ends. I'm using too many clarifiers. Say it with your chest. Company initiatives tend to cause more harm than good as they're happening, because you will draw out other challenges that you didn't know. So, and it's going to happen, right? And I think it's really important for people to acknowledge that at the forefront and say, we are going to do our best. Here's our plan. But we also know there's a lot of unknowns right now. So here's how we want to address them. Here's our plan of attack whenever we find an unknown. And here's what we want to do to address it. But we can't do this without you. So if you see a red flag or you see a roadblock that we can't see in our current roadmap, please tell us, because we want this to be easy for you.
Right.
So I think doing everything you can to open the door for communication and meeting people where they are instead of broadcasting it is really important, and validating their emotions throughout the entire process are great steps for any leader and any change agent to go through.
That's great. Two thoughts came to my mind as you were explaining kind of your perspective there. One is, I think as a change agent, and actually there was a post today on LinkedIn that I saw from, I think her name is Sarah Judio, she's a change management kind of consultant. And she said, resistance is a form of feedback. And you need to listen to it. And that leads me to a thought about how change agents, my reaction to her post was, what change agents need thick skins. But after this conversation, it also makes me, our conversation here makes me think about having emotional intelligence about your own state. Because a lot of times when you hear negative feedback, like, oh, this is terrible, this is disrupting my day, it's easy to get defensive and maybe hurt. Like, dude, I put so much effort into this. Like, I've tried so hard to engineer this process so that it would be more effective, and all I'm hearing is negative stuff back.
Yes.
And it's really hard. It's really hard to hear that as a change agent. So I think kind of the emotional intelligence can help you ride the rough seas that almost always come along with change. Any perspective?
Oh, yes. Oh my God. The number of times I have felt personally attacked by feedback to the process that I created, it's one of the biggest reasons I had to develop these skills, because as an engineer, I put my identity for a long time into my work product. So if someone is attacking the process, it felt like they were attacking me. And when I, had to roll out this new 35 function process, there were a lot of people that were super frustrated because they felt attacked because they had worked on the original process. And they were like, who were you to come in and change everything? It was fine before you got here. And I'm like, whoa, I'm new here. I'm doing what I'm told, right? And so,
and those are legitimate feelings
yes,
too, right?
Completely.
Like, to be part of that original. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So they had every right to feel that way because they had worked really hard and it was an amazing process. And so what I had to start doing was validate that they set the groundwork and that I'm not changing anything, right? Like, your amazing work is going to still exist. We're just rebranding it. And that's all we're doing, right? We're just adding a little bit more structure and we're just adding a little bit more clarity in these 3 areas. So the more I said, okay, I'm not coming for your process. I'm not coming for your work. You didn't do anything wrong. Here, this is just the next level. This is the next iteration. This is the shinier version, right?
Right.
But it really did take me doing my own inner work to not take it personally and to develop, like, I know we use that term thick skin, and I think more of it in the terms of just like the water off a duck's back, because I know it's not meant for me, right? Their emotional reaction is not meant for Nikki.
Exactly.
So like, you can just let it go. Like, this, it's not a reflection of Nikki and Nikki's job. It's a reflection of how you're feeling in this moment and about the work that you feel threatened by. But I don't have to take that on and do something to fix it or internalize it. I can recognize that this is how Nikki's feeling. This is what I'm trying to do. And I can calm myself down and I can hear what you're saying and slowly tease through, okay, I know you're projecting. I know you're frustrated. But eventually, like, you will say something that is a bit of a great set of feedback for me, right? Because resistance is feedback. You're going to tell me something that is important for me to address. So I'm okay if you are venting frustration, right? I know that it's not about Nikki. It's about the situation. And so eventually you will say something in that vent session that is going to be helpful for me. So sometimes it can be really beneficial for you as a change agent to let people share their frustrations with you, because you're going to hear a lot more when someoe's that vulnerable and that honest with you than if they came to you super polished and they were like, this is my organized thoughts, right? Brene calls it the shitty first draft. And I love a shitty first draft. Like, I really love it because it and the way I see it is you're kind of tapping into that subconscious frustration and it just kind of comes out without you consciously trying to control it. And especially as a change agent, if you can create a space where people feel safe enough to give you a shitty first draft, you're going to be a much more successful change agent because you're really going to solve the problems that they're frustrated about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think this actually touches on another topic that I think we should explore, and it's about empowerment. I think a lot, in some cases, you have executives and the change agents that they've voluntold to go lead an initiative, which comes back to trust, right? You earn that, right? You earn the opportunity to lead a change initiative, and that can be good. But a lot of times they come out, there is a vision that, like, okay, this is the way it's going to work. And this is the solution in a complete form. And I think a lot of times the organizations that are more successful are the ones that they walk into a change initiative thinking, okay, this isn't a complete solution because we have stakeholders that are invested. And if we can get them to not only give us feedback, but also help us solve problems, tweak it, transform it, and become invested themselves, the likelihood that this will be successful on many fronts is much greater. And I think, I hadn't thought about it before, but I think emotional intelligence plays into that aspect as well. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it takes a great sense of humility to know that you are doing your best, but it might not be the complete picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that even project managers struggle with, whether you're a change agent or you're running projects, right? The idea that you have to have this essentially false confidence that you know that this plan is foolproof, right? And it's not fair, because you have to develop that false sense of confidence, or you have to project that false confidence because you have executives who expect it of you. And so I think
Yeah.
it's twofold. Like, one, as a change agent, it's really important for you to be comfortable and vulnerable enough to say, hey, this is our plan going forward. We know things will change. We know that there are going to be roadblocks that we have not anticipated. But when we hit them, we do have a plan, right? Like, we have a structure for how we're going to address it. But this is the best we can do, and this is the best we can forecast right now, right? No one has a
Yeah.
crystal ball. And as much as every executive wishes that, yes, everything always goes according to plan, and just because you have a schedule doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition on time.
Yeah.
So I think it does take a lot of emotional intelligence and a lot of humility and self-awareness to know that you are doing your best, and to also communicate that with people like your executives, who do expect you to be essentially like superhuman in your ability to plan for the unexpected. So I think it requires, again, just going back to the humanity of everybody and saying, we're all doing our best.
Yeah.
This is the most accurate picture we can give you at this point in time. But I promise you, we will continue to keep you updated. And every time we hit a roadblock, we will do something about it. I'm not going to just throw up my hands and be like, oh, well, no one does that. So
Sure.
I think it's perfectly fair for change agents to just be completely honest. And I also think executives need to work on their emotional intelligence and self-awareness to not hold people to impossible standards, because it just sets everybody up for failure.
Yeah. 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 That's such great advice. I love that. And I'd like to extend that. Let's have one more question.
Okay.
Great conversation, but the workplace is changing, not just within engineering, across all sorts of different functional departments. And there are people in different generations that may not be as kind of up to speed on these latest changes and understanding what's going on with different generations. And as I see that, it just makes me think about kind of grace and patience and tolerance. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm not going to go out there and say, I know everything about what needs to happen in a modern workplace, right? I have a lot to learn. And I think there should be a lot of grace and patience and tolerance in all directions, older generations of younger generations as they enter the workforce, and vice versa. So they can give older generations the chance to kind of get reoriented, to begin to understand what's important to them. I'd love to get your perspective on that, because today's environment, there may not be a lot of grace and patience and tolerance. So would love to get your perspective there too.
Yeah. I think at our core, it's really important for us to connect with people before we start working with them. And what I mean is, I'm not saying make small talk, right? Because there's incredible research done at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, by the chief scientist, Dr. Elena Polameni. And her work is all founded on the fact that we hate small talk. Every human hates it.
Interesting. Okay. I hadn't heard of that before. That's great, though.
Yes, and it's amazing because, and I know anybody that's neurodivergent will very much attest to this, but we crave deep connection with people. And if I feel connected with you, I'm going to feel more inclined to enjoy working with you, or I'm going to find a way to enjoy the work that we do together, even if we have difference in political opinion, right? Whether it's a difference in philosophical values or religious beliefs, you can find common ground with everyone. I firmly believe that. And I think from a generational standpoint, if you're trying to cross the generational divide, just remembering that we're all humans, we all have passions, we're all here for a reason. There's something that excites us, right? So people love talking about themselves. Ask them questions about themselves. And it's simple. I actually have a set of 26 questions to build connection with people that I give my students. And
that's great.
Yeah, happy to share. And it's a set of like, some of them are like innocuous questions. Like if you, like the first one's like, if you were famous for something, what would you be famous for? And yeah, it seems like a very, like, what a silly icebreaker question, but it will reveal a lot about you. Like when I, if I were to answer that question a few years ago, I would have said, I want to be famous for solving the world's energy problems. But today, Nikki wants to be famous for doing this kind of work, for changing the culture of engineering and creating a more sustainable future, right? Like that's what Nikki wants to be famous for. And that just told you a lot about what Nikki values. And even when I asked the question to, when I would do it with my team, sometimes you'd get answers like, oh, well, I want to be a great cricket player. I'd love to be famous for playing cricket. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, what would you do with that? Right? Ask the follow-up question. Okay, tell me more. Why cricket? What else, what does that give you? And his response was, well, I would have a lot of money so I could donate to this charity and create new housing for this region that I was from. And I was like, wow, I just got to know you on a very deep level with a simple question. So regardless of generation, we're all human. And I really invite people to spend quality time building connection. And it can be simple, innocuous questions that open the door for meaningful conversation. But if you spend even 5 minutes grounding yourselves in your humanity before you dive into the meat of the meeting, you're going to have a more productive meeting because you're going to trust that this human on the other side of maybe this conflict, right? We're all trying to solve this big problem. You're going to know that this person's on your team and not this combatant that you're facing in this meeting, right? The more we can humanize ourselves, regardless of generation, the better off all of our workplaces are going to be.
Yeah, that's so great, man. What a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. This is so awesome. Okay, if folks want to find you, Nikki Maginn, what's the best place for them to find you?
I have a website and I will send you the link to that. But I am the most active on LinkedIn. I know there's like a million socials out there, but LinkedIn is my home base right now.
Okay, cool. Good deal. All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. These are my favorite things to talk about.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Send us a message, leave a review, or join the discussion on our social media pages. Until next time, take care and talk soon.